Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Okay, guys, we're going to dive deeper into food addiction and nutritional advice from Coach Jessyca, because Jessyca is a keto evangelist coach, and you specialize in coaching people with food addiction and how and why the benefits of being in nutritional ketosis or keto adapted to help break that binge cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm incredibly honored to be able to work with people. When I was going through my own food addiction, I really didn't have a resource, and I'm always grateful to share that. We were talking about how do you treat a person in terms of their nutrition who has food addiction?
Yes.
Versus someone who is starting a ketogenic diet and doesn't have food issues. And it is very, very different. I greatly encourage intuitive eating for people who have food addiction. What I mean by that is, not tracking. So many of us who struggled with food addiction are so numbers obsessed. And one of the things that becomes overwhelming with any kind of lifestyle, and the thing that kind of makes it not sustainable, is tracking every bite of food in our mouth. And so there is a freedom that comes with intuitive eating on a ketogenic diet that I've never experienced before keto. And I find that works for most people. At some point in their journey, some people decide to track just to tweak. But in the beginning, how I start them off is low carb. We basically eliminate grains, sugars, starchy vegetables. And that first week or two, it's about detoxing, getting rid of that and eating, trading out. And I don't worry about quantities too much that first week or so. I let them get through that. And then, of course, make sure they're supplementing a lot of electrolytes. We need so much salt especially when we are getting our body clean of all that stuff. And then the next week or so, depending on how they're doing, that's when we really start to limit carbs. I do find that starting everybody at 20 carbs a day is the right way to go. I know that's something that can be adjusted up or down depending on individuals later on, but that pretty much assures me that they will be in ketosis in just a few days. Many of them get in ketosis that first week, just when they cut out, they automatically are so much lower on carbs. But 20 or under is how I start everyone. And again, not so much tracking as giving them a resource that says these are low carb vegetables, and it takes you have to eat a lot of spinach to really blow your carbs. But I have a few visuals, some of them from Diet Doctor, some from Keto Evangelist, that show, here's your average amount of carbs here's a handful of spinach. So I really focus on keeping it loose, even when tracking carbs for them. Because it's so important not to get caught up in the counting.
Yes. I totally agree. I find that when I'm coaching clients in my 30-day transformation program is getting them to get off the diet part. Because I think even if people have food addiction or not, if you grew up like I did and dieted all the time in high school, college, and as an adult, we just have that diet mentality that, as I always say, is a new lifestyle and a way to eat in your relationship with food. So counting just, I think, to me is a stressor. If you used to be obsessed with counting calories, that, it's a fine line of, all right, I'm getting into another diet, or I'm going to if you have a food addiction, you probably have that obsessive personality. I would think that then you tend to just get
perfectionist.
Yeah, perfectionist, that you get sucked back into a different rabbit hole of getting crazy mindset.
Well, there's a couple. Yeah, it's crazy mindset is right, because there's a couple of things that can happen. So many people who have disordered eating patterns are also perfectionists. And what happens is the numbers become a way to judge whether you are good enough or not. And if you don't hit your numbers exactly, there's this all or nothing mentality. Well, I blew it, so I might as well binge. Or, you know what, today is blown, so I might as well start over tomorrow. And that happens over and over. Without the numbers judging you, that takes that pressure off. If I'm just saying just eat keto, that's so much less pressure. For a lot of people, that's hard to give up the control of counting. And I really have to encourage that, because it is part of the freedom that comes. The other thing I think that's dangerous about that diet mentality is the worst thing about diet mentality is diets have an end point. And so when you are saying, you know what, I'm on this diet, you're thinking at some point this is going to end, so I need to hurry up and make this happen. If you don't have that end point, you realize that you can, as long as you are making changes and progress forward, you're going to continue to do that. And there is not this race to get it done, because you're going to sustain it. And losing 10 pounds and keeping it off forever is greater than losing 50 pounds and then gaining the 50 pounds back over and over again. So I think, again, I'm with you on that diet mentality thing. It's one of the reasons why I've been able to sustain keto all this time and stay in recovery. I've never counted. I never, ever counted my macros in over 3.5 years, and I lost 135 pounds. You don't have to count.
No kidding. I think it's important that to walk your talk. And I try to practice what I preach. Like example, I was trying to schedule some podcasts with some of our other presenters we met up with on the cruise. And I have to be strict of what times I have available, because someone said, oh, make sure you leave time for you. I'm like, yeah, that's my whole schedule now. It's just, if I don't have enough time for myself, I'm going to cancel something else out.
Yes.
So I think it is, important to make time for yourself, make it a lifestyle, make it a new journey and not a diet, something that ends in 30 days. As I have clients all the time that are doing different diet programs, and they come to me for fitness training. It drives me nuts, because people still go to these diet centers, and now there's some protein thing and they measure your proteins, and it's annoying to listen to.
I'm familiar. Yeah, I'm familiar with that program. And let me tell you, that is painful. It is really painful, because it's pretty low calorie, really, really low calorie. I think, again, one of the things about keto is the satisfaction that you get from the fat. You get enough protein, and then the fat is enough to fill you up and keep you satisfied. I know for me, that was one thing I had never really felt on any diet. I felt like if I didn't feel deprived, then I wasn't doing it right. And I struggle with that at the beginning of keto, because I'm like, I can't be doing this right because I don't feel that hunger. And I think that's a little bit of a disordered thing too. You're almost, when you are expert dieter, when you feel that rumble in your stomach, you're like, yes, I'm strong, I'm doing it. And it's not like that on a ketogenic lifestyle. You feel satisfied. And you really just have to press through that and say, wow, I can be satisfied and get healthy and lose weight and lose fat. And that is kind of the amazing. That's when you start to say, maybe this is kind of a miracle. I know that's how I felt about it. Kind of still do, Well,
like you said, big words, deprived. I'm not deprived and I'm satisfied. I mean, come on. So if you are struggling, and I just wrote a blog today. I love saying the struggle's real. If you are one of those people who are fighting dieting and you're trying to burn fat and you're just not having much success, and you're trying to just feel healthier on the inside out, and for athletes trying to improve performance, it is tweaking what you're eating, but not being obsessive about it. And, like you said, most people that are probably listening are type A personalities, triple A personalities that strive for perfection. And if they don't do something, when I was writing down all these things you kept saying, just are so right on. Like, you have we have that all or nothing personality. And so if it doesn't work, we give up. Or it's like people training by heart rate or trying to do a program. If you can't eat the right amount, if you're dieting, you give up. So I think this makes it more of a lifestyle and not a diet. But they need to remember, and I know Dr. Westman and Dr. Berry were saying the same thing, eat as much as you want of protein and the healthy fats. Choose to feel full and satisfied. That I think we still, these people I was coaching last week in a program, that they're still doing these little tiny servings. And like, no, you should be full and satisfied and just eat as much as you need till you feel content. But it's so psychological that we have to minimize our serving size.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you know, I think most people that I work with, the generation I work with, and I do have some older and some younger, but like we grew up in the low fat, smaller portions, eat less, move more, all that stuff is what we grew up with, and unwinding that. And really, you know, science has helped me get over it. When I understood about insulin, I needed to understand how it worked for me to trust in the beginning of my journey. And so really reading and digging deep and listening to things and going to conferences, science helped me understand why it worked, and I could relax a little bit. It wasn't a fluke that I was eating more food and losing weight. It wasn't a fluke that I was satisfied. There was a reason why, and it actually helped me. So I use that when I talk to people. I explain why. But you're right, it's so hard to get past what we've always done and always been told. Even if we learn a better way, we are inclined to do that. So yeah, sometimes it is a matter of people not eating enough, and that can slow down their results too. And like you said, sometimes you do have to tweak. Absolutely. I always say when we do use tracking as a tool, it literally is for a distinct period of time. And we will say, this is what we hope to accomplish. We want to learn what happens when we do this. Like we use a very specific thing. Any tracking tools are really just that. I call it a tool, and that's meant for temporary use. I like to use blood glucose to figure out things with clients. I like to use that more than I like to use the scale or tracking apps, because we can see specifically how different foods affect that person. It may affect them and not the next person. And I think getting them interested in self-experimentation helps a whole lot too.
I had someone email me the other day, is this okay to eat? Is this too many carbs? I'm like, I can't. It depends, you know. It's so you don't. That's why I think it does help to test, because to me doesn't mess with my head of counting calories or counting macros, but just to test my blood sugar, as we spoke earlier, is so easy to do. And I think that's a good way, like you're saying, how do I need to adjust my fat, protein, and am I eating too many vegetables? You know, I mean, is that throwing me out? It's just such a crazy thing after being around all the carnivores on the low carb cruise, that it's like, all right, are my vegetables throwing me out of ketosis? And it could.
The answer is sometimes. And it depends on who you are, you know. Mm-hmm. It really is that individual, and it's fascinating to watch different people do different things and then experiment with yourself. You know, we keep bringing up the idea of this is not a diet, this is a lifestyle. One of the things that keeps it exciting is constant experimentation. And finding different things. And even if something works for you and it's great, I still like to experiment with other things within the ketogenic realm. So I've experimented with carnivore. I think the thing that's really important, again, if you have a disordered background, is not to label yourself one thing or the other, because you can begin to restrict. So if I were to say I'm a carnivore, I would cling to that because it's that all or nothing thing. And then I would feel like, well, I blew it if I ate an avocado or if I had a salad once in a while. And I personally don't claim a title. I say, I usually eat meat these days. I eat meat and I eat fats. And every once in a while I'll have some vegetables. And that's just, my eating has sort of progressed to that. I would say naturally. People find as food sort of slides into the background of your life and it becomes something that you use to fuel, and it's important for it to taste good, but you're not constantly thinking about it. you care more about the fact that it's fueling you than the fact that it's very exciting. I feel like I've gotten to the point I could kind of eat the same thing every day. I don't want to, but I could, and it wouldn't bother me too much. In the beginning, I made all the recipes and did all the exciting stuff. But I really think that's part of the success, and part of overcoming the obsession is, oh yeah, right, I'm hungry, I should eat. And I know I have food in the house I can eat, but I'm not worried about what it's going to be. It doesn't have to have a million steps or be all that fancy. Yeah. So I think it's kind of neat. Like that's the opposite of obsessing is like, oh yeah, food, you know?
Well, you said back just a minute ago, just not claim a title. And that is so true to me, that the carnivores, which I understand, as I said before, but I just find it that fine line of when we start titling and getting categorized. And it's like, I'm so strict one way, is that going to become an eating disorder for me? That I'm so strict on not having any carbohydrates, that it's like, how can you sustain that for a long time? You know, it's just something maybe.
Well, it becomes a way we judge ourselves too. Just like, you know, we've talked about the scale and how, you know, this is about fat loss, and the scale is not that great of a way to tell you if you're doing well with losing fat. Your pants are, your measuring tape is, a picture is, people's compliments are, but the scale's not that great. And I think anytime that we use a number and that number makes us feel a certain way about ourselves, it's a problem. So we talked about testing. I am about testing, but I have seen people that become, I'm going to call it ketone chasers. Like, ooh, my ketones are good, so I'm great today. They will ignore the fact that they feel bad if they have good ketones. They will ignore the fact that they feel great if their ketones are low. Like, I was feeling great, but then I checked my ketones and they were only whatever. So, you know, anytime a number changes your emotions and guides how you're going to feel for the day, there's something that isn't right about your relationship with that sort of test.
Yeah. Like we said, what are you running from? What else is going on? The root cause of the addictions.
Exactly.
But that reminds me of the same conversation I keep having with some people about fasting, that people fast or they get obsessed, which I think it's a fine line again of being eating disorder, that you're changing your relationship with food. Say, all right, see how long I can fast, but then are you becoming scared to eat? But then other side of it is when you do eat, people think, oh, I just fasted 72 hours. I can eat whatever I want. And then they refuel and break your fast by eating a high carb, garbage diet meal plan.
I have an interesting relationship and thoughts on fasting as someone who struggled with anorexia in my 20s. I would go 10 days at a time and not eat anything back then.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, that was normal. I did that often. That's when I was just extremely skeletally thin. So you would think, and you hear a lot of people say, you know, but you have a history of eating disorders, you should not fast. And I think for a lot of people that's true. But I also think in recovery, there are some people who can. Fasting is something that I choose to do personally because it makes me feel really good. And the thing that got me excited about doing it was, again, science. I learned about autophagy, and I learned about how you can heal past metabolic damage with planned fasting and doing it right. So my reason for fasting when I do it now is to heal metabolic damage. And I thought, how interesting that I probably did severe metabolic damage by starving myself in my 20s. And now here I am, 45, and I'm kind of trying to undo that with fasting. The thing is, one is punishment and it's control, and the other is healing, and you're doing it because you want to feel good and for the right reason. I have clients all the time who I tell not to fast, because I see they have this trend. They'll be so proud that they fasted and they binge afterwards. And I'm like, I would rather you just eat well every single day. Fasting is not for everyone. That is for sure. And you really have to be secure in your recovery before it's something you should even attempt if you have a background of eating disorders.
Agreed. I would also add to what you're talking about, metabolic damage. And I've always said, and I wrote, I think in my book, and talked about this in the past, that because I grew up in the age that I thought it was healthy doing fat-free, non-fat, low-fat, you know, everything. and just ate pretty much 99% carbohydrates, thinking I was so healthy that I feel like I always have had metabolic damage since then from eating excessive carbohydrates. And
yes,
I think part of that, the benefit of fasting for my own self-experimentation has finally becoming more insulin sensitive and the leptin sensitivity. And I finally like eating more protein and fats. And this is just recently, it's been forever. I'm like, how come I just ate all that and I'm not even full? That is so weird. Then you learn about the hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin. And then I think it's just fasting this year that finally it's like, oh,
it resets your hunger.
Totally reset.
Yes, that's it right there. Again, digging into science, we learned about the hormones, leptin and ghrelin, and that's kind of exciting to me. I didn't know those words when I started keto, but I knew as someone who had bulimia and was a compulsive overeater and who ignored hunger with anorexia, I knew what I used to say is, I don't know what it feels like to really be full or to be hungry. Like I burned that switch out in me. Somehow I knew there was something in me that said, you should be full, you should be hungry, because I watched other people and I saw that happen to them. But I'm like, I burned that out. It is gone, like blown up. But the reality is that between keto and, for me, fasting and finding what way fasting is right for me, that has been restored. I absolutely do know when I'm full and when I'm hungry now. And that's, again, miraculous for me because I thought it was gone.
Mm-hmm. And that's a benefit of the fasting, I think, really helps. That's controlled. But I like the words that you said, that it's not punishing yourself, but healing. And that's in functional diagnostic, FDN, I hate saying the whole word, FDN practitioners, what we learn about is identifying healing opportunities for individuals and putting those with their main health complaints or unexplained symptoms. And as I was writing an article yesterday about, putting the pieces of puzzle together to help figure out which areas of body is out of balance and creating chronic stress and leading all this to metabolic chaos that we talked about with Reed Davis. And I think the big thing is the word healing, and everything you're talking about is healing opportunities to thrive and feel alive, improve your vitality in daily life. And that's the big part of the holistic method for me, is that happiness part. And I was gone on, the weekend I had this picture of swinging on a swing set at this coffee place, which is hilarious. And I was playing in these chairs, and it made me think, Jimmy Moore posted a picture today. I saw him going down a slide. And I think that is a central part of is playing, is the happiness is what I say in holistic method. But I really was thinking about all that today. I'm like, it's play. Just be goofy, silly, let your guard down and play. And I think everyone gets so obsessed and, we're perfectionists. We're trying to do all this stuff. It's just, just chill out.
I think it's hard for people with the type of personalities that we've been talking about to chill out. I know I'm the type of person, even like when I've gone on vacation in the past, if I was just sitting, my husband can sit there. He's very good at relaxing. That's his personality. He can be chill. And I'm like, I should be doing something. I feel like I should be doing something. So your talk on the cruise actually was very impactful for me when you talked about your holistic method, because I really hadn't looked at stress and sleep as almost equal to food. Mm-hmm. I understood that stress was a component, and I knew that's something that has gotten much better for me, but I don't think I've focused on how can I de-stress. And I think that setting aside times to have fun and not work on things is pretty important.
Yeah.
Again, this personality type of the person who is a food addict, we tend to be driven, which makes us even crazier. Why can't I fix this eating disorder? Because I'm driven and I can take care of everything else in life, but this one thing I can't fix. But I think that stress component is understated.
You should learn from someone that's been dealing with this since 2013 when I fell apart, and it is now 2019 that I'm finally feeling better. And I think, to me, my journey is to, not worry about is eating more protein and fat for my metabolic type. I definitely know a difference.
Right.
Now it makes me feel better and my brain's better, but also I schedule time to not be rushed, and that stress part. And the holistic method, I think, is really what I'm passionate about sharing and closing my business so I can do all this, because I think it's so essential to everyone that's trying to become fat burning machines that we forget about all the other factors, including letting yourself be funny and silly and just play. And I know it's just being so serious that I think it's an important part, but side note, I just want to go back. I think
we have to embrace that. Yeah.
I know. Embrace it. Side. It is. Just wanted to bring back to our main focus, because I tangent with you. It's so easy. So much to talk about. The fat adapted process. We wanted to talk a little bit more of what to eat. And you were saying how you start people being low carb, high fat. And I think this is a big topic that I'm going to be addressing with every other presenter that was on the low carb cruise. What is your definition of, like, being low carb, high fat becomes teaching people to be fat burners, but it's not necessarily nutritional ketosis. And that's this topic I keep bringing up with everybody, because I think it's very confusing that even if you're doing low carb, high fat, it does not mean you're showing ketones or ketogenic. I think that's a confusing part.
I think there's, to me, and this may not be where you wanted to go with this, but I think, the label keto is stuck on everything. And to me, keto, people use as short for ketosis. To me, keto is short for ketogenic, and they're two different things. Lots and lots of different things can get you into ketosis. Lots. You can take exogenous ketones. You can starve yourself. If you don't eat at all, you're going to start producing ketones. But that doesn't mean it's a healthy ketogenic diet. And so that's what I like to explain to people. Yes, there are many different methods for doing, and I'm doing my fingers in quotes here, keto, but everything that puts you in ketosis is not healthy. So I always come from a standpoint of health, and that means it's ingredients focused too. So we talk about, it's so important, I did low carb back in the 90s, Atkins, and Mike and I talk about this, we did it together, but we still ate garbage. Like, we ate the low carb wraps, and we ate things that were still inflammatory. We didn't know any better. We ate, bars and Carb Master ice cream. So you can be low carb, high fat, but still not be eating a healthy ketogenic diet. So for me, health matters, ingredients matter. And so the high fat part, the way that I explain to people, again, if they're not tracking, how do they know they're getting high fat? Well, for one thing, I say, look at your carbs that you eat as a vehicle for fat. Literally, picture that as a vehicle fat. These carbs are fine. There's a small amount of carbs, but I'm using them as a vehicle to literally get fat into my mouth. And that seems to ring a bell with them. And I give them examples, like if you're normally at a steakhouse and you would order a potato that is loaded, instead get broccoli and load it up with the same stuff you would put on a potato. There's all your fat. So it's really about that mindset of, I don't have to have a ton of carbohydrates, because I'm going to be very satisfied by using that small one serving of carbohydrates to get the fat in. And the fat then satisfies, and then you tend not to overeat. And really the same thing with protein. Keeping protein is very, I know, individual. That's one of the things that's been so awesome to test for. Like, what happens? How far can I go with protein before my blood sugar is affected? And I think that's one of those cool things that you can find out about yourself. But also use the protein as a vehicle to get the fat in. You don't need to make yourself overeat fat. But if you find yourself getting hungry again within like 2 hours, you're not getting enough. I mean, it's as simple as that. If your meal will take you for a while, if you can go 4 or 6 hours and you feel satisfied, you're getting enough fat. So the measurement process with that, for me, is not that important with someone who are trying to get through or get out of obsessive behavior and obsessive cycles with counting and all of that.
So you're working with people probably that carb addicted to carbohydrates.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What food addiction to me is carbohydrate addiction. So to get into nutritional ketosis, because you said earlier that the ketones fuel your brain, help break that addiction for you as an individual. But how do you get people from, you said you start with low carb, high fat, and then do you keep dropping those carbs and adding more fat and protein to get them to test for nutritional ketones, like 0.5 on the meter kind of thing?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say, I don't know how you feel about it. I am not a fan of the strips whatsoever. I tell people to save their money for bacon. They really don't tell you that much. They're kind of like a pregnancy test. Either you're in ketosis,
the urine test.
Yeah, the urine. Yeah, it's like the keto strips that you're in. I'm like, they're kind of just nothing. Don't use that. But I do encourage people to. The reality is, I've never had a person who was eating under 20 grams of carbs or less not get into ketosis. And really, it doesn't take a long period of time. If you are cutting carbs and you're not overeating protein and you're eating enough, you have to fill that in with fat. So as you lower carbs, you replace that with fat. Like the example in the restaurant, right? So I'm lowering my carbs. I'm not having the potato. I'm having the broccoli. But I am still getting enough food and satisfaction by adding fats to that. And that's how we do it. I say, you know what? What's a meal you would have had in the past? And we talk about that and we take things away from it and we add things. So I would have had a burger on a bun. Okay, let's take away the bun. How can we add fat to that? Well, let's add some bacon. That's going to add some protein and some fat. Let's add some ranch dressing if you want to, or let's add an avocado to it. So it's about how do I take this moderate amount of protein and this smaller amount of carbs and make them vehicles for fat that will satisfy me. I've never had anybody have problems getting into nutritional ketosis, again, even without measuring. They just stick to good ingredients and really, really limit carbs and in portions. And honestly, I have people that they don't have any idea about portions. And I will say, hey, why don't you send me pictures of your food for a week?
Yeah, that's what I do.
And I'm like, to me, that says way more than tracking in and out.
Yeah.
I said, what I would have done with this is I would have eaten half the broccoli and double the,
yeah, that's
whatever.
Exactly. I think that's so much easier for them too, because no one likes the emails. So I stopped doing these, daily emails when I do my group programs and give them homework and stuff to do. Everyone's too busy. So I find, okay, just text me. We do group tests.
I do the same. I literally do the same thing.
Send me a picture of your meal. And then we did a Zoom conference call, and everyone supports each other and shares ideas. Is kind of what I love. But what do you find? I know the answer is always depends, because this isn't the same for everyone, but average kind of the length of time it takes people that are addicted to carbohydrates to switch to showing some ketones and balancing the blood sugar?
Well, within a week, people are showing some ketones, usually. Some. It doesn't mean they're all the way in ketosis, but they're normally producing some ketones, something measurable.
But sorry to interrupt, but that's by what they're eating, not because they're taking some prove it or
that's right.
Keto, because those automatically put ketones, exogenous ketones into your blood.
Exactly. And again, this is just my opinion, but drinking ketones and then peeing out those same ketones does not mean you're in ketosis. Yep. That's just my opinion. So people get confused about fat adaptation versus just being in ketosis. And I compare my own journey, like back when I was on Atkins, I definitely was in ketosis. I was eating garbage sort of carbs, and I was eating low enough carb that I was in ketosis, but it didn't help me. It didn't help me with my eating disorder. It didn't help with my mental health issues. Why is keto different? Well, when you stay in ketosis over a period of time and you're giving your body enough fat, enough calories to fuel it, you become fat adapted. I think when you go in and out of ketosis, like you often do on other sorts of plans, you never really get to that point where you're fully adapted. And when you're adapted, your body just knows, hey, my goal, my mission in life is to burn fat for energy. It doesn't wonder whether you're going to give it glucose. It doesn't wonder if carbs are coming. It's like, hey, I know I got to burn fat today. And it's not like a huge process. It's normal. And at that point, your hunger is much, much lower, typically, from what I've seen. And fat adaptation sometimes takes a couple months. And you have to be willing to say, okay, I can wait a couple months to get fat adapted. And I'm sure you deal with that dealing with athletes.
Yeah, I think that's what's so different, how damaged people are to carb addicted, or athletes too. If I'm helping an athlete, that they're sugar dependent. So it's just almost the same thing in a different relationship with food. But that what they're taking in is still excessive amount of carbohydrates because of what we've been trained, or we're never being satisfied. So we're eating 6 times a day. And people that are doing athletic events and training, they just think they need to have that bottle of Gatorade beforehand and then have a Cliff Bar, which is 50 grams of carbohydrates per, bars. And they're having one of those an hour and then a gel. It's just like, no. So I think probably athletes are taking in more sugar than people that are binging on carbs and not even knowing it.
It definitely depends on the person, but it's true. And I think again, that period of time where you are not using carbohydrates for energy, that your body isn't fully adapted to burning fat automatically energy, that's a tough time for some people. But it's so great when they see it through. It is a whole different level of energy. And one of the things, and I know we're talking about eating disorders, but I also struggle with mood disorders and depression and stuff like that. But and that often comes along with eating disorders. The reason that it helps is that you don't have these extreme highs and extreme lows in your energy. When you've got this steady source of energy, you feel more leveled out. You feel more even keeled. And to me, again, as someone who struggled with really bad anxiety, that was miraculous. I know I keep saying that, but when you think there's nothing, when you tried every pill, when you tried every program and nothing's worked, and then it's this, I got to eat that. I got to change my food, and this is really going to work. It feels like a miracle. It really does.
So I wanted to add what you were saying earlier, what was now, what was then, what is now. Like, how is Jessyca eating now to take care of her whole self, to stay in nutritional ketosis? Because you said for you, that helps keep you on track and breaking those food addictions. So for someone that's curious how to, get ideas of what do I eat, what's the difference for you back then to, 5 years later?
I think when I started, I, again, was really interested in recipes. There's some great resources out there for those. There's cookbooks, there's all kinds of things. Because food was still really, really important to me at that time. But again, I still figured out that what I would do is I would say, what kind of meat am I going to have for the week? When I was making a grocery list, I'd say, what kind of meats do we want? And I would plan it out carefully, and I would pick that, and I'd say, okay, what side am I going to have? And there was always a side. And then I would say, how am I going to make both of those high fat? Right? So every meal always had protein plus fat, carbs plus fat, sometimes fat bombs. Like, that was in the beginning. But as I started to work through this, and as I became fat adapted and food became not as big a deal to me, I find my food is much simpler. Like, I can have a steak often. It would not bother me if I had one every night. I can repeat meals a lot. One thing for people who are say, I'm so busy and I really don't cook at home, you really can. If you have to eat out, you can stay keto. It's not hard to do that. But even if you don't have a lot of time, you can buy bulk meat. Like, you can buy a lot of hamburger and cook it all at once. And one of the ways that's worked for my family, because we are all ketogenic, but we don't eat the same amount. Mike eats much more protein than I does, and Claire eats a lot more fat than I do for her epilepsy. We just cook the meat and have that ready. So what that looks like in my family today is I will get out whatever portion is good for me that I've discovered works, and I will add whatever I want to it. Because it's just plain meat, I can add, Mexican seasonings and then add sour cream and guacamole, and I've got Mexican. But then Clara will take that same meat and add some Italian seasoning and some cream cheese and some Raoul's spaghetti sauce. And she, so it works totally different for our family. It used to be these, like, we sat down together and we had these extravagant meals, and it's just so easy now. It isn't a huge production. And some people are like, but that's your time together, sitting down as a family and eating. And what I have to say is, actually, we just spend time together all the time because we're not focused on eting, and eating just is one other thing that we do. So we don't miss that time together. We've spent more time together than we used to when our lives were revolved around food.
But don't you find, I was thinking this last week when I was coaching a group of people, and that we tend to think, we have to sit down for dinner to spend time together. And so why don't you go for a walk outside? It's summertime when we're recording this. So why don't you go outside or go sit outside, or, just be outside and do something instead of sitting at the dinner table as our only way to communicate with each other. So how many people are actually communicating we're at the table and talking about your day versus your kids are on their phone or social media or something, and not even focusing on conversation? Because
especially when it's focused on food, you're sitting at the table, you're busy focused on food. You're not talking to each other anyway. I think that's such a good point, because one of the things that people deal with in getting well from, compulsive overeating, eating disorders, and binging is they have that holiday mentality, but it's a holiday, so I have to eat such and such. And one of the things that I always tell them is, it's always a holiday. Every day is somebody's birthday. If it's not your birthday, it's your anniversary. If it's not your anniversary, it's Mother's Day, and then it's Father's Day, and it's the 4th of July. You will always find a reason to not eat keto if you make that the reason. It's always that. So separating why you are participating in the event from the food is a really important thing. For example, Thanksgiving. I remember the first Thanksgiving I was keto, and I was like, this is the best Thanksgiving of my life, because for the first time I wasn't so gorged with food and laying in a chair. I actually had conversations with people. I was not worried. I felt good the whole time. We were not in a food coma. I'm like, what are we really here for? I'm here to spend time with my family. I'm here to be thankful. Yeah. And the food is just, okay, there's some food, And I think that's when you can get to that point, it helps you understand. My body doesn't care if it's a holiday, by the way. It's still going to be addicted to food if I try to eat some garbage,
I think that's exactly what it is, though. People think it's a holiday. So your Thanksgiving, for example, you already have the mindset. It's a binge fest day. Right. I'm going to have as much as they want. And some people have 2 Thanksgiving dinners if they have to go to the in-laws or relatives or friends' houses. And I think I used to struggle.
That's a joke. Yeah. I got to wear my fat pants. I mean, literally, people say that. I got to wear my stretchy pants. Today is about binging. I know. How about thanks? How about gratitude?
What the holiday's about?
Relationships. Being thankful for each other. Yeah.
Well, that's what even Easter. So we're getting off. Yeah. I know. I talked to you
sorry.
Easter's the same thing. But I have clients that they go away because their kids are, they have grandkids, and they go in the wintertime. People in Seattle go to Palm Desert all winter, or Arizona or Hawaii is close by. So people go away. Well, what happens, I hear this heard it today, that they eat out and they just I'm on vacation. And my point is this is your life now. So get the mindset out that you're on vacation. You're going to eat whatever you want.
I just love you. Because we think the same. I'm telling you, somebody that came up just yesterday, and I said, your body doesn't care what city you're in. You're still addicted to carbs. So eating them in Hawaii is going to have the same damaging effect as eating them at home.
I know. That's so funny. But that's what it is. Even my husband and I'm having him do my Jumpstart, intermittent fasting during the week because he travels a lot for work now. And so he thinks he can eat whatever he wants because he's out of town. But we're like, Kate, you're traveling every other week. So it doesn't really work that way. So
it doesn't even count as a special occasion. At that
I know, it's not. So anyways, let's go over your places to get help from you. You're a keto evangelist coaching. So I'm just saying that website, ketoevangelistcoaching.com. So put all your links to get more information to hire you as a coach and help work on if you have food addiction or feel like you connect to a lot of the things we're talking about. You are an amazing, passionate coach. So I think that's a great place to get started. And we'll be doing live video. Well, this comes out after KetoCon, but hopefully you guys can go to and find our recordings of KetoCon because I'll be doing some hopefully live Facebook Live with everybody there, Instagram Live, whatever.
Excellent. Can't wait. Thank you so much for having me on to talk about it. It's nothing I love more.
I think it's great. And I just think even though this is for endurance athletes, but I always find it anyone who wants to improve performance in life and sports. And teaching people to burn fat, as I've created the holistic method, that's not just what we eat, but how we eat, when we eat, why we eat. And that's a big part of being healthy and from the inside out. So it all ties together. And I think a lot of people are addicted to carbohydrates. So I thank you for letting out your personal story and sharing your struggles and wins and everything you've learned from that to help other people.
Thanks a bunch. That's why I do it.
Me too. All right. Thanks, dear.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.